I'm joined by Alexander Marks, Schools Over Stadiums, and I find it really hard to believe what I've seen in Las Vegas. I know the process is hard in Oakland, but introducing something at night of a 3-day weekend, ramming it through with limited public comment, it just seemed like a lot was left to be desired from a communication and public standpoint. So as you sat by and watched what happened in Vegas as they passed SB1 and $380 million potentially public funds are talked about, what are you thinking as this all transpires?
So it's kind of been a long process. We had it was called the Rainy Day in Nevada rally. So that was, we were asking for a 20% salary increase from the state, $20 minimum wage for our ESPs, and 20 students per class. So we are coming off the tail end of this huge successful rally in Carson City, outside of the legislature. And then the next week was the first time we had seen any actual language for the stadium. That took all the oxygen out of the room. So at that point, we were like, okay, we're going to get this. They have the money. We're going to be okay. And then all anybody wanted to focus on was the stadium, which is like, educators are used to kind of getting hit a lot. And that was kind of just one more little gut punch, I guess, of like, okay, so this is just going to be the focus now. So we were able to delay it through the regular session, thankfully, to, our new colleagues in Oakland. We formed, that was like the first time we were like teaming up on stuff, going like, I think there's something here. We should explore this if we have to later. So 2 days after the regular session ended, they called a special session to hear Senate Bill 1, which was the next giveaway. So we had 8 days of just straight, how do we give John Fisher this money? I think, when you're a legislator, your job is not to get to a yes on a vote. If it's just bad policy, it's bad policy. This was bad policy from the get-go. They didn't meet with any community partners. They certainly didn't meet with, the statewide educators union, my group. But for 8 days, we had a front row seat of a misguided legislature that ignored several issues left unfinished from public education. There were bills that didn't even get heard, like one to reduce class size. We have the largest class sizes in the country. They didn't even bother hearing that at the legislature through session. But what they did hear was John Fisher's cries for public money for his stadium. And they bent over backwards, and eventually they found a way to get to a yes so that he could build his stadium in Las Vegas. It was kind of interesting during the special and regular session because the Golden Knights were doing so well in the playoffs. This is a homegrown team. We all love them. Even if you don't like hockey, you're probably a fan. And the dichotomy of this homegrown team doing so well, going to the Stanley Cup with this like really weird, do the A's even want to come here? Do we want them to come here? Does anybody even know what this owner looks like? All I've heard about him is just awful things out of Oakland. And they really didn't do themselves any favors, I think, having that comparison throughout the special session. They still figured out a way to do it, but I don't think it did them any favors with the public.
Yeah, and they weren't really forthcoming. I mean, you saw the moment when A's president Dave Kaval actually went down and answered questions and didn't answer any questions and then slinked off. And at that point, I was like, wow, this is going really poorly. And then that same guy actually voted yes. So it seemed like a really interesting process from afar.
Mr. Disingenuous, I think they call it on Twitter now. I think that was kind of what rubbed people the wrong way is, you're watching these hearings, and I sit in a lot of them, and you're going, I can't get a read on them, but when they start to criticize certain things and you say, wow, that's a great point. And then they vote yes without even having addressed the point, then you're kind of going, they got him to a yes, but how? How did they get him to a yes by not addressing anything that he was concerned about? So there was a couple folks up until the last minute that people had no idea how they were going to vote. And then they vote yes. And, they'll have to answer to their constituents because, generally, this is not a popular idea. Like I said, if John Fisher, I know this is out of character for him, but if he wanted to privately finance the whole thing himself, we would close up shop tomorrow and say, fine, there's nothing for us left to do. But, when you're using public tax dollars, it's not being a good steward of the money, especially if your constituents are going to say, why did you give that money to him? And I live in Reno or I live in Elko. And most of the rural and Reno, politicians voted no. There were a couple that voted yes. But it's really only something that's going to benefit Clark County if it benefits anybody at all. And I don't think it will. I don't think the economics are there. There's nothing to suggest a publicly funded stadium will work and bring in the revenue they think it will. And we know that because we already bought one in the Allegiant Stadium just a few years ago. And we still have the same issues with public education. So it's clearly not bringing in the revenue that they think it is. So I don't know how a stadium half the size with half the capacity is going to make up for any difference that Allegiant Stadium currently isn't bringing in.
Now, my mom's a teacher. I have a very soft spot for educators. I've really enjoyed the way the teachers in Nevada, Clark County, and otherwise have really jumped in and kind of teamed up with A's fans. But for me, I don't live in Nevada. I don't live in Clark County. So I kind of just have been sitting on the sidelines and watching this all play out and seeing that you guys actually did file what would be the application to get this on the ballot. You need a lot of signatures. You need a lot of money. There needs to be a lot of work. So, I mean, how monumental is this task? Because it seems like you have really powerful unions that are actually for the stadium, and the teachers' unions kind of split off into two unions. So, I mean, how reasonable is this? Can this really be done? Can you pull that bottom card out from the House of Cards, as you guys often tweet?
Yeah, I think working with educators has shown me, these people do the impossible every single day, right? They have the least amount of resources, the highest amount of classes, highest class sizes, highest vacancies, and they make it work. Should they have to go through that? No, but these are some of the toughest people who understand that, the children are their priority and they have to be. So that's why they make it work. So I'm inspired by that because they do it with, the resources they have. We're going to do it with the resources we have. I think, the partnership we've been able to forge with the Oakland fans has been fantastic. Like, just always like to shout out them because, I mean, they've been donating to our educators here, cleaning off their donors chooses lists. Like, they feel so bad for how poorly our educators are treated in Nevada that they are going above and beyond. So it's heartwarming because it's like, wow, there's still good people out there. And, I guess all of them are in Oakland right now. But I think, look, I was listening to, they're going to hate me that I said this, but I've been listening to Public Enemy a lot just because that gets me hyped up sometimes. But harder than you think, like, it's a beautiful thing, right? Like, we know it's an uphill battle. We really do. We know it's going to cost money. We're working our butts off for fundraising. We know it's going to get the signatures. Like, we just know, we know it takes a lot of work, but we have the will. I know the unions are kind of split right now, and that's fine. We're usually at the table with them, but this is just another issue we don't agree on. But we're, if we can qualify, I have no doubt in my mind that the Nevada people are going to vote to support our position on the referendum.
All right, so in attacking SB1, your strategy here won't be just to annihilate the bill completely, right? You're going to go after the funding components of the bill, because if you take away the money, then whatever happens, right?
Correct. So, ideally, we would have loved to include the entire amount, the tax credit and the referendum. But, we had concerns that Steve Hill had made. Essentially, he made to the Review Journal where he was just going to rush through the development deal, right? Just rush through everything, get it done. And then that would, allow him to hide behind the contract impairment clause of the Nevada Constitution. So once he read that, we're kind of like, he might be right. So we had our attorneys look at it. We have attorneys who, one used to be the president of the State Bar Association in Nevada. The other actually used to work for the Legislative Council Bureau in Nevada. So very, very sharp minds who were like, yeah, he could have some legal merit. So at that point, we kind of step back and said, okay, well, then where could we attack? How can we adapt to this a little bit? And I think, being good stewards of the contributions we've had, we want to make sure we're using that money appropriately. Unlike the Nevada legislature, we want to make sure public funds and the funds we have are being not mismanaged by any means. So we took a look. The disclaimer language in the sections 29 and 30, which pertain to the ability to pay back the bonds at the county level, it has disclaimer language that basically allows us to run a referendum on it, right? So the sales tax didn't have that language, but the bonding portion does. So that's where we can attack. So that's basically, in the bill, it's 120 million. So it'll be more over time, but that's just whatever. So if you take that 120 million out, we think that's the house of cards. I think if there's no ability at the county level to pay back those bonds, then they don't have the availability for that money. And if they don't have the availability for that, then it makes the 180 pretty much meaningless, because John Fisher's not going to go get another 120 million from somewhere. And if he does, the Nevada legislature looks like a bunch of suckers for giving him 120 million that he's now going to claim he doesn't need. So I think that's kind of the I don't know if he was just trying to, disregard the educators and what we're trying to do out here, or just being flippant, but getting around that issue, I'm not sure how they get around this one. The development deal might be the hard part, but this part, I think that's why they've been noticeably silent on this issue. I haven't heard anything from the
Yeah,
A's
you
in an
see
entire day.
A's refused to comment, so and so refused to comment, everyone refuses to comment but you at this point, which may mean you struck a nerve, Alex.
Yeah, I think, if their attorneys are being honest with themselves, I think they're looking at that going, the same language that we can hide behind on the tax breaks is not the same language we can hide behind on this bonding issue.
So did he tip his hand, so to speak, to use a Las Vegas casino
I think he
term,
did.
when he
I
made
think
those
he
flippant
did.
comments against you?
I think he did. And I don't know the tone. I only know based on what was in the RJ. I pretty much will take anything that's denigrating as dismissive.
Interesting.
You're with us or you're against us, I guess. But I think in his perspective, being able to say like, oh, we'll just rush through and we'll beat him to the ballot box. Like, I think that was his tell, where, okay, so you're just trying to get things into place because you think that a referendum won't, so to speak, hit the edit undo button on all that, or it can't. But they broke up the funding so much that by protecting that part, they left this part vulnerable. And I think that's why strategically, if we go after that, that's the house of cards. Because I think if you lose that 120 million plus, why do you need the 180?
Yeah, now I'm looking at, you mentioned Steve Hill, and Steve Hill was always up there with Jeremy Aguero. For the record, Jeremy Aguero, as everyone likes to call him on social media now. The interesting thing, though, is these people weren't lobbyists. Like, Jeremy Aguero was paid by the A's. He was on the governor's transition team. He was up there pitching this entire thing. How is he able to do this without being an actual lobbyist? Is there other ways you can potentially attack this situation short of going straight after the money? I mean, how can you ethically do what he did? Is that a normal situation out in Clark County?
I mean, I'd say unfortunately it is normal. So I think we've had some run-ins with Jeremy Aguero. For the record, he was the one who crafted the brand new education funding formula back in 2019. Also, I don't believe he was registered at that point. We still honestly have no idea who paid him to do that. So there were rumors that it was the Senate caucus that paid him. There were some rumors that it was the Wynn Resorts that paid him. Nobody knows who paid him to write this funding formula. To me, that it won't certainly negate the bill, but it does put another layer of this doesn't pass the smell test. You've got Jeremy Aguero not being registered. The whole point is, who is paying you to be here? I am paid by the Nevada State Education Association to go up to the session. When I'm advocating, everybody knows who pays my paycheck. They know where my loyalty lies, and that's the whole purpose of the disclosure. So to have no idea who paid Jeremy Aguero the entire time, I don't think it's enough to go, well, obviously it was the A's. How do I know that? That's the whole point of disclosure. I think Steve Hill made an interesting comment that he was basically working for free on behalf of the A's because he's the stadium authority guy. That seemed like overcompensation to me, or a weird way to say that's why I didn't register as a lobbyist. You can certainly register as a non-paid lobbyist, Mr. Hill. That's an option. If you're just up there to do nonprofit work, plenty of people have, the little badges that are different. It just says registered non-paid lobbyist. But who is paying you to do this? Like, when you advocate, you're bleeding the line of lobbying. You're not just there to explain the economics behind the stadium. Who paid you to be there? I think, we submitted a letter in July to the Legislative Counsel Bureau complaining about the alleged unregistered lobbying on both of those gentlemen. Still have not heard back. We have followed up a couple times, but that's just, unfortunately, even in her statement, she said there probably was some lobbying. I don't know what the repercussions are, if it's a fine or whatever, but I mean, it's one more level of just how bad this whole deal was from the get-go, as nobody even knows who was paying these people to be there from the start.
Yeah, and Aguero, for the record, was being used often as a source in almost every article I read and every news story. And this is not an economist. This is a guy who I believe has a legal background. So I think
it's a hotel hospitality, and he did go to law school.
I'm perplexed.
And I think I saw some
A's
fans asking him about shampoo bottles in the hotel room, just to really bring that point home. But I think, it was funny because I think it was the Review Journal that called him Nevada's top economist. and he is not an economist. So when you have the paper of record calling somebody the top economist, who's not even an economist, and maybe he is the top economist in Nevada. Maybe that's why we keep giving billionaires stadiums when they ask for it. Like if that's our understanding of good economics, maybe he is the top one. But all joking aside, he's not an economist, so to call him Nevada's top one's unfortunate from the newspaper of record in Nevada.
All right, let's go over some details real quick. I want to make sure I have all this right, and then let's just quickly assess. So you need 102,586 signatures, 25,647 equally from each congressional district. And this has to be done by July 8th, 2024. And this would be for a November 2024 vote, right? So you got a lot of work to do and not a lot of time to do it. So what exactly are you going to do to knock this out?
So I think we have, we're kind of looking at this like an 18-month campaign, right? We started in June. We're still fundraising. It's steady. Are we at our $1 million mark yet? No, we, still need quite a bit of money to be able to do that. Excuse me. So we are going to dive heavily into our volunteer base. We're always looking for volunteers to come out. When we're traveling around in, Reno and, the northern Nevada areas, people don't like this deal. So they're ready to do whatever they can, whether it's sign, go out and get signatures. Yesterday to me was the first day of the campaign, right? Even though we launched in June, but yesterday was the first day we can tangibly hand somebody something and go, this is what we have done. This is what our hard work has been put into. We're going to be able to sign this. We're still in the middle of that 15-day period. So we filed, they have about 15 days, not including weekends, to file a complaint against us in the first district court if somebody wants to challenge the description and effect of the petition. Am I anticipating that? Yeah. Do I think it's a good idea for, a team that wants to ingratiate themselves into a new location to go out suing educators on their first step? Probably not, but maybe that's not who sues us. But I think we'll get through that. LCB lawyers and former bar attorney presidents writing this, we're fine. We think we're good on the legal merits of it. So once that happens, we're through that. We'll probably start gathering signatures in October, because I think that's probably as early as we can in terms of, we don't want to start going out and gathering signatures now and then go to court and have a court say, well, you should probably change this, because then that invalidates everything. So just, due diligence stuff. So I don't think, it seems like a short window, but I think between October and June, we have a lot of time. There's a campaign season that'll kick off next year in March. That's when a lot of the organizing gets started. So we're going to be able to pull from our volunteer base quite a bit for the first couple months. Hopefully fundraising goes well. We are in discussions with various vendors to go out there and gather signatures for us as well. We've done this before. We had a couple other, this is before my time at NSCA, but we've done some ballot initiatives and stuff in the past. We're all at the office getting, registered as notaries so that we can sign all these petitions. Like we've got the plan in place. It's going to be a fundraising haul that we know that's going to be probably the biggest haul. I think once we can get over that hump, the signature gathering is going to happen, because when we're talking to members and just community members, I know Selena LaRue Hatch is one of our members up north who's been a big vocal anti-stadium opponent. Every time she drops her kid off at school, there's a parent thanking her for her advocacy for public tax dollars going to essential services. So people are paying attention to this, especially up north, where a stadium in Vegas is not going to benefit them at all. So, we've talked with the Oakland 68s about having a big bus trip out from Oakland to Reno, where we can gather signatures in Washoe County for a couple of days. So we're excited to, kind of tap into the Oakland fan base a little bit and explore that partnership more off in the outside of a grocery store than on social media. But we know it's a lot of work, but I think, again, we're focused on the fundraising, because I think once we can pay for those vendors, it's done. We'll get all this.
Yeah, I mean, I don't think a lot of people quite understand, but if you live in Reno, it's actually closer just to go to the Coliseum than it is to go to Vegas. So Reno to Oakland is actually way better for most fans in that area. Right. Yet they're here paying for a Vegas stadium, which makes it harder to go to games. It doesn't make a whole lot of sense. So I think you'll find a lot of support there. And you're mentioning your fundraising goal. Like, what is the mark you have to hit, and how far away would you say you are from that mark?
So it depends. So we're still looking into litigation. We still have a legal, I keep sending these guys questions, so it keeps taking longer to get an actual legal memo. So I should probably knock that off so we can kind of see where they're at, but they're still working on some stuff. So that's still on the table. Just because we're doing the referendum doesn't mean the litigation's off. If they find something that we can try to knock this down with, we're going to go that route. If we just do the straight referendum, we're probably looking at about $800,000 to $1 million. if we want to do that with some sort of like an initiative where we're, contemplating doing like a public education revenue piece on that, like for gaming, for instance, probably looking at 1.5 million. And then we'll start gathering signatures in tandem with whatever vendor we're using next year. But so, it still kind of depends on the option, but I think $1 million is probably our goal. If we can get $1 million, the referendum will be fine, and we'll have enough money to run that through and get a vote to the people.
Fascinating. I mean, you have your work cut out for you. Again, I've been following it from afar. I haven't really been engaged, jumped in. I don't live in any of the counties in question here. So I've just been watching and just following you. I know you've been following back, and A's
we appreciate the retweets
very closely.
Yeah, it's this Oakland partnership we got's been great. I mean, it's tactical. We've been very transparent with them. Like, hey, we want you to keep the team. We don't want to pay for this with our public dollars. So let's work together. If we can stop it here, it defaults back to Oakland because there's no other location on the table if we take Vegas off the table. I don't know if they end up moving somewhere else or if they go to try to scam some other state, but knocking Vegas off the map first defaults it back to Oakland. So whether that's Howard Terminal, another site, whatever, this is our best effort to hopefully get you guys what you want and keep our focused priorities in Nevada on our kids in public schools.
Yeah. And I mean, hopefully all that can be achieved. I think that baseball in Oakland would be great. I think baseball in Vegas would be great too under different circumstances. Let's do expansion. Let's get some Vegas owners out there that are actually willing to pay for what they need to do. I think that everybody can win here. Yeah. It's just going to take a heck of a fight. So thank you very much for joining me, Alex. I appreciate your time.
Thank you, Casey.
And stay in touch, man.
Absolutely. You too. Thanks.